Welcome to SysEng Quick. My name is John, and today I'll show you how to work with privilege escalation in Ansible. So far, we've been connecting to our servers as root. That goes against established best practices, and in many places would be a policy violation, if it's even possible. In a production environment, your system would likely already be provisioned with a non-root user for this purpose. My hosts are generic LXC containers, so let's use root one last time to create a non-root user for Ansible going forward. We'll also make sure sudo is installed for privilege escalation. Many distros include it by default, but Debian is not one of them. Before we get started, I'm trying out a new video style. Let me know what you think in the comments. Is it better than the old style? I have the inventory open in VS Code. I made a new LXC container named athproxy for reasons we'll explore in a future video. In our collection playbooks directory, let's make a new playbook called non-root-setup.yml. Let's create our first play. I'm going to call it the create non-root user for Ansible play. We'll target the LXC host. We don't need to gather facts, so I'll set that to false. And in our task, we need to do a couple things. The first thing I want to do is install sudo. So we're going to make a role to do that. So we'll use import role. The name of this role is going to be sysengquick.tutorial, which is our collection, and then the role is going to be sudo. Our next task is going to be to create our Ansible user. Again, we're going to make a role for this, so I'll do import role. The name of the role, again, is going to be sysengquick.tutorial, and I'm going to call this role user. We haven't seen Ansible variables yet, but we can pass them to our role using the vars keyword. Let's go ahead and do that. We can supply some customization to our user role. Let's make a user name. It's Ansible practice to name your role variables with the name of the role and an underscore. That's why all the variables in the user role will start with user underscore. So username, I'm going to say it's Ansible. And I'd like to be able to give it sudo privileges. So let's make another variable called user underscore sudo. And we'll make that a Boolean, and I'll set that to true. Let's make our sudo role. I'm not going to use Ansible Galaxy for this because most of this boilerplate it generates isn't that useful. So we're just going to make a new file under the roles directory. I'm going to call it sudo. Directory under that is going to be tasks. And I'll create the main.yml file, which is our main task file. In here, we can make our first task, which is to install sudo. Now, we've been using apt and dnf to install packages. However, there is a generic package installation module in Ansible, and it's called package. So let's use that to install sudo so we don't have to wonder if we have apt or dnf or what have you. The name of our package is going to be sudo, and the state I expect it to be in is present. This is actually the default, so I don't have to specify that, but I like specifying the state when I use a module. Before we installed NeoFetch, we updated the package cache. Let's see if we can do that here as well. Let's go ahead and say update package cache, and let's go ahead and import a new role. We're going to import the role named sysengquick tutorial package cache. So we need to make this role. If we go over to our roles folder, we can make a new file, package underscore cache, task main.yml. So what do we want to do in this task? Well, I would like to include the task we were doing before for Debian and Red Hat. So let's go ahead and do this. So we'll have our first task be update package cache, and we will be doing an include task. And the task file is going to be based on Ansible facts.osfamily.yml. Now we need to go ahead and create these task files. So let's go ahead and do that. We'll make two new files, one for Debian with a capital D, and one for Red Hat, capital R, capital H. Let's go back to install Debian, and we'll just borrow this that we did in that system. So over here in Debian, that looks good. And then over here in install Red Hat, we'll copy this. And back over here to Red Hat one, there we go. Okay, there we have our task for updating Red Hat or Debian. So that all looks pretty good. The one problem we have though is that what if we have a different OS family, say Arch or Gentoo? Well, this task would just fail. Let's add a when condition to make sure it doesn't fail. So let's say when Ansible facts.osFamily is in supported families. And we can create this variable, supported families, right here in YAML. So I'll say we support Debian and we support Red Hat. Okay, that all looks pretty good, except we may not have this OS family fact. We're going to need to make sure we get that as well. Let's go back over into NeoFetch, and we went ahead and did this. So let's go ahead and copy this over into our main.yml. Let's go ahead and just add that there. And the only change I want to make here is we may already have the OS family fact. So if we already have it, let's not gather it again. Let's add a when clause. So I want to know if OS family is not in Ansible facts, because if it's not, we need to gather it. Otherwise, we don't. Now, this is a variable, just like Ansible facts, or at least Ansible thinks it is. But actually, it's a string, so we do need to quote this. However, this is no longer valid YAML, so we need to quote the entire string. If you don't like the way it looks with the quote thing, you could do it with this instead, and that would also work. However, I'm fine with the double quotes part, so we'll just go ahead and put it like this. So now we'll make sure to gather the OS family fact if we don't already have it, and then if we're in a supported family of Debian or Red Hat, we will update the package cache. And then if we decide to add Arch, we could do that in the future. Heading back into our non-root setup playbook, our next role is the user role. Let's go ahead and make that. We'll open our File Explorer, make a new file under role called user in the directory task main.yml. So here is our task. So how do we create a user? Well, let's name the task create user, and fortunately Ansible has a built-in module for that. We're going to give it a name property, and the name is going to be the username variable we passed in this playbook, right there. Okay, and then we need the group, and I'm going to copy the username to be the group name. And finally, I'll say state present. This is the default, so you don't need to specify it, but I prefer to be explicit when writing my modules tasks. Our next task is to set up sudo privileges if this user sudo variable is set to true. So let's add a new task in our role called add sudo privileges. We're going to do that by creating a file under etc sudoers.d. We'll use the copy module to write this file. The destination is going to be in etc sudoers.d, and they usually add a numeric prefix, although it really wouldn't matter too much here. And then we'll add an underscore and the username to be the rest of the file. We're going to give it some content, and although we only have one line, I'm going to use a pipe here to show off a multi-line string in Ansible. It makes it a bit more readable. So we're going to give it the username, and I'm going to say this user can run commands on all servers. It can run them as all users. It does not need to have a password, and it can run all commands. The syntax of this file is a bit esoteric, but you just have to know how it works, or look it up on Google as I usually do. One more property is the mode property. We're going to set it to permissions of 0/600. In other words, root can read and write, but no one else has any permissions for this file. To log in to our servers, our Ansible user is going to need an SSH key. Let's go ahead and generate one for the user. I'll go to the terminal and we'll do SSH keygen -t ed 25519, and then I'm going to save this in private SSH Ansible. We'll give it a super secure passphrase, and then we can cat out the private SSH Ansible.pub to get the public key that we'll need to place in the user's home directory. To install our new SSH key into our user's authorized keys file, we're going to use a module from the Ansible POSIX collection. To do that, we'll need to install that module. So I'm going to do Ansible-Galaxy collection install Ansible.POSIX. And I believe it will install version 1.5.4. Yeah, it's been installed successfully. Now we can add our next task, which is add SSH key to the authorized keys file. We're going to use the authorized key module from the Ansible POSIX collection. So our state is going to be present, our user is going to be our username, and we need to supply the key. To do that, we're going to use a lookup plugin built into Ansible. Ansible has several of these, and you can also make custom plugins. So our plugin is in the built-in collection, and it's called file. Our second argument is going to be the path to that file, which in our case is private SSH Ansible.pub. There we go. There's our authorized key. This should allow us to log in as the Ansible user now. On our terminal, let's make sure we can still log in to our new LXC system. I'll do Ansible LXC-m ping. And it's prompting me for the SSH key. Since we're in a test environment, I don't really want to be prompted for this. There is a way around it. We can configure Ansible to not verify our keys. Why don't we go ahead and do that real quick? Let's go open our ansible.config file. And in here, we're going to add a new property, which is going to be host key checking equals false. Let's go ahead and save that. Go back to the terminal. And now we can connect without being prompted for the key. Now, this is obviously not a great security practice, so I don't recommend you do this in production, but in a lab environment, it's fine. Okay, I think we're ready to create our non-root user. I hope this all works. I did not test any of this. Let's find out. Let's do Ansible playbook sysng-quick.tutorial.non-root setup. And that should be good. So let's go ahead and run that. It's gathering our facts, updating package cache, installing sudo, and it says the group Ansible does not exist. My guess is that I shouldn't have added the Ansible group explicitly to the user. Let's go ahead and remove that. It will probably create one with the same name by default. So back in our user role, under our main tasks, we're simply going to comment out this group part and see if that fixes our problem. Let's go back to the terminal and let's try running this again. Okay, it created our user this time, added the sudo privileges, and added the SSH key file. Everything ought to be good. Let's see if we can log in with our new user. I want to do SSH Ansible at athproxy local technoplaza.net. It's asking for a password, and I don't have one. But I can't log in without one, so that's a good start. Let's add that SSH key to my agent. So if I do SSH add, we can do SSH add /private SSH Ansible. I'll add that password, and let's try again. Yes, I can log in now. Do I have sudo privileges? Yes, I do. Okay, everything seems to be working with our non-root user. So let's go ahead and go back to our inventory, and let's change our Ansible SSH user to Ansible. So from now on, we will run things as the Ansible user. So let's go back to our terminal, and let's do Ansible LXC m ping. Yep, everything seems to work. Can we prove we use the Ansible user? Let's do the shell module, and we'll give it the argument, who am I? And you can see we are the Ansible user. So yes, we are now using our non-root user. Now that we're using our non-root Ansible user, can we still do things like install neofetch? Doesn't that require root access? Let's see what happens. If we go back to our terminal, we can run our Ansible playbook sysange quick tutorial neofetch. And let's see what happens. And it fails as you probably expected. It even says, are you root? And right now, no, we are not. How do we fix this problem? Let's go back to our install Debian playbook and add a new flag. We need to become the root user, and Ansible has a built-in method to do that. It's called become. We can simply apply the become property to any task. We can say become true. Here's the app task that failed. We've added become true. We actually need to add become true up here as well. You may be thinking, that task didn't fail. Why do I need become true there? Because the only reason it didn't fail is because it didn't actually update the cache. It just checked if the cache was out of date, which is not require root privileges. Since the cache didn't need updating, it didn't have to do anything and didn't need sudo privileges. But if we did have to update the cache, we would need to become. We'll go ahead and set become true in both places. And let's try this again. I'll clear the screen and rerun our neofetch playbook. Ah, that looks much better. We have now installed neofetch. If we do Ansible LXC with the shell module and run neofetch, let's see what happens. Yes, it does work. So this looks good. We were able to install neofetch. It was slightly annoying to be required to add the become property to both tasks. Let's add an Ansible block. We can apply it in one place. We'll go up here and make a new block, and we need to name our blocks, just like we do with tasks, plays, and playbooks. So I'll say this block is going to be become root to install packages. Then I'm going to apply the become property to everything in the block. Finally, we need the block keyword. And all we have to do then is indent this to be an array underneath our block. We can remove our become true, and now we have a block where the become property applies to each task in the block. Let's make sure everything still works. We'll go ahead and clear the screen, and we'll rerun that playbook. Everything looks good, but we can't quite be sure because remember, this update package cache worked because we didn't actually have to update the package cache. Same thing here. We already have neofetch installed, so it didn't actually do anything. Let's go over to our system, and we will uninstall neofetch to make sure we didn't do anything odd. So we'll do sudo apt remove neofetch, and we'll go ahead and say yes. We'll go ahead and log out, and now let's run that playbook one final time. Okay, now I'm positive we still have become root. And that covers the basics of using non-root users and the become plugin with Ansible. We'll see a lot more as time goes on. I hope you enjoyed today's video. If you did, I'd appreciate it if you'd hit those like and subscribe buttons. It really helps out the channel. Thanks for watching. See you next time.